Hello Internet peoples, welcome to Todd Talks Movie Reviews. And today we're going to be reviewing everyone's favorite Star Wars movie, The Phantom Menace. Now, I'm going to assume most of you have seen this movie already. I mean, the movie has been out for like 20 years now. And if you're a Star Wars fan, I assume you've probably seen The Phantom Menace at some point in your life. But if you have not seen Star Wars The Phantom Menace, too bad, I'm about to spoil it for you in this review. If you want my general thoughts on the movie, non-spoilery, before you decide you want to see this 20-year-old Star Wars film, basically, it's bad, but not as bad as everyone makes it out to be. It's kind of on the low end of Star Wars films. So basically, this week, I'm going to be doing 3 Star Wars reviews this week, and I'm going to do 3 more the next week, and the following week, until we review everything in visual Star Wars canon. So the prequels, the Clone Wars, Solo, Rogue One, Rebels, the original trilogy, and the sequel trilogy, and maybe we'll do Resistance, I don't know. And then I'll do an episode 9 review when it comes out. I'll do a non-spoiler review, and then a spoiler review a few days later. Although because I'm doing so many reviews in 1 week, this is not going to be a very long, extensive review, and I don't think there's much I can say differently that other people have said about The Phantom Menace. My thoughts are pretty similar to a lot of other people's. I'm not a big fan of it. If you're a fan of The Phantom Menace, that's okay. You're allowed to like this movie. I know a lot of fans are very divisive on this film. I used to actually like it as a kid. I thought Jar Jar was funny, and I enjoyed the lightsaber fights and all that. I didn't really care that much about plot or acting or whatever. I just thought, ooh, shiny. But, as I got older, I started to really dislike the film. But there is still somewhat of a special place in my heart for this film. I do enjoy it to some extent while watching it, if not just to laugh at the bad parts. But just because I don't like the film doesn't mean you're not allowed to like this film either. You're allowed to like whatever you like. I just personally don't enjoy it, and I'm going to give you my reasons why. Or just my general thoughts on the film itself. So the basic premise and driving force of this film is that basically the Trade Federation is upset with the Galactic Senate that they've imposed heavy taxes and tariffs on the Trade Federation for doing trade on specific trade routes. And they've set up a blockade in front of the planet of Naboo in order to protest these taxes and tariffs. And if you have no idea what I just said, you're not alone, because a lot of people don't either. This is one of the biggest complaints about this film, is it's a very political film. That's not a big issue for me personally. I'm actually pretty interested in politics and, a lot of the stuff that happens in the political world. So seeing a political thriller Star Wars film is not really boring to me, or doesn't go completely over my head. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some parts that confuse me and I don't 100% understand really what's going on with the politics of the film. But for a lot of people, this was very jarring for a Star Wars movie. I mean, when you went from the original trilogy, which was all action, adventure, excitement, fast-paced, blasters firing, lightsabers swinging occasionally, and then you go straight from that to the Trade Federation is upset that there are taxes all over the... Wait, that's the big issue here? It doesn't bother me personally, but I understand why it bothers a lot of people, because it does feel very jarring in comparison to the rest of the Star Wars movies. But that's basically the driving force of how this adventure starts. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are sent to negotiate with the Trade Federation here, try and work out some deals, and let some trade into Naboo so they can, get food and supplies and stuff. But they flip out because nobody apparently told them that Jedi were the ambassadors, which... why wouldn't you tell them that? That sounds like a weird thing not to tell them. Like the Chancellor's like, we're going to be sending you some ambassadors. And, oh good, this is a good idea. We will work out the trade agreement. And it's like, and then they show up like, hey, yo, we're Jedi and we got lightsabers. It's like, you could have at least gave them a heads up. This makes them flip out. They tell Darth Sidious, who's really Palpatine in disguise, and the young Emperor. And then he just tells them, yeah, kill the Jedi and start your invasion of Naboo. Of course, the Jedi survive and escape and, go with the fleet heading to Naboo to warn the Queen that there's an invasion about to start. Now, this is one of the things about the movie that really bothers me. Why does the Trade Federation want to invade Naboo? I've seen this film several times, and I have never understood why. There is never an explanation as to why the Trade Federation would ever want to invade Naboo. We know why the Emperor wants it, or why Darth Sidious wants it, because he's not the Emperor at this point. He wants a crisis to come across that Chancellor Valorum isn't really capable of handling. So, of course, Padme will vote for a vote of no confidence, which will get Palpatine elected. So we know why he wants it. But what incentive does the Trade Federation have to do with it? Like, they have an agreement with Sidious. They're not like his lackeys or his lapdogs. They don't have to obey his every command. He had to negotiate some kind of deal with them to say, hey, this is mutually beneficial for us. So what is the benefit of them invading Naboo? Even Qui-Gon mentions later on that there's no logical reason for them to invade. And it makes no sense, which automatically tips him off that there's something greater at play here. It's just one of those things, it's we needed this to happen for the movie to happen, but we never came up with a good explanation for it. There's no answer in canon or legends. I don't know. I haven't been able to figure one out. If I'm missing something, let me know in the comments. But yeah, and then when they get to the planet, they run into Jar Jar Binks, who is everyone's favorite Star Wars character. Yeah, no, this is a character that's caused a lot of controversy. Jar Jar Binks is definitely one of the most controversial characters in all of Star Wars. And I think the main reason why he's so controversial is that his character is so jarring in comparison to the original trilogy characters. I mean, sure, the original trilogy had comedy, it had comedic moments, and some comedic relief characters, but they were more like Abbott Costello, characters with R2 and C-3PO. George Lucas specifically intended for Jar Jar Binks to be the Goofy of Star Wars. And that is probably where he made his mistake. Now, I'm not going to throw any hatred at Ahmed Best, the actor who played him. He was a phenomenal actor. He did what he was supposed to do, and he's a really great guy. And I feel really bad for a lot of the hate he received for playing Jar Jar Binks. He definitely didn't deserve any of that hate. And it really makes me sad to know that all that hate led to him being very suicidal later on in his life. And I definitely don't want to add to any of that. This fault is more on George Lucas, nothing against Ahmed Best. I will say, I do find Jar Jar annoying, but he's not my most hated Star Wars character. Salacious crumb. No, he genuinely has some funny moments. I did find myself laughing occasionally at some of the jokes he makes. But it does get a little annoying really fast. And after he serves his purpose in the movie, which is to introduce Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to Bossness so that they can get on a bongo and go through the center core of the planet to get to the Queen faster, he really is kind of just there. He doesn't really do much after that point, until the very end of the film where he's suddenly made a general. I honestly would feel a lot better about his character if I felt like his character grew. That's one thing about this movie that really bothers me about him, is that he just kind of is the same person throughout the whole movie. He doesn't grow, he doesn't change, he doesn't become less klutzy, he doesn't become less goofy, he doesn't become more honorable or anything like that. He doesn't really grow as a character. He just is just the goofy Jar Jar throughout that movie and every single appearance he's made ever since. And this is my main problem with Jar Jar. Could he have worked conceptually? Yeah, I think he could have. But I don't think it was well executed. And then, so we meet the Queen, Queen Padme Amidala, who we don't know as Padme Amidala. She's just the Queen of Naboo. And this is also leads into one of my other problems with the film, is how dry the acting is. Her performance, whenever she's the Queen. Now, granted, the Queen is supposed to be a very emotionless kind of person, but it doesn't really work because everyone else is so dry and emotionless through a lot of the movie. So her being dry and emotionless during her scenes when she's dressed up as the Queen doesn't really work because it doesn't contrast with anything. When everyone in the movie sounds like this,
you will not be so pleased when you hear what I have to say, Viceroy. I have word that the Chancellor's ambassadors are with you now, and that you have been commanded to reach a settlement.
Who was his father?
There was no father. I carried him, I gave birth, I raised him. I can't explain what happened.
A cup. A ship. A speeder.
I mean, the only other person that isn't really dry in his acting is Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar at least has expression. He's all like, Mr. Jar Jar Binks, you also saved me life. Anyways, to continue on, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Jar Jar meet the Queen. They get her onto her ship. They push past the blockade, and they get shot at, obviously, because it's a blockade. And a lot of the ship is damaged. Luckily, R2-D2 shows up and saves the day. Well, he's on the ship, so he doesn't really show up. But he wasn't able to fix it enough because, obviously, the hyperdrive is shot and broken, and they need to get it replaced. It's completely fried. So they have to make an emergency landing on Tatooine, where they try to buy a new one, but for some reason, Republic credits don't really work out in the Outer Rim. I guess because Tatooine is not a Republic world, so I guess Republic credits don't work out there. So they have to find some other way to buy a new hyperdrive. And this is where they meet Anakin Skywalker, young Darth Vader, who's a 9-year-old. This is probably one of the harder parts for me to talk about because I feel like it's kind of a sensitive issue. Young Anakin was played by Jake Lloyd, and he just was not a good child actor. I really don't know why they cast him for the role of young Anakin. I think maybe because they thought he had good chemistry with Natalie Portman. But if you watch the behind the scenes, when they get to the part where they talk about the casting for Anakin, there were like 3 other kids that they showed. And I actually really liked one of them. I'll even throw up the clip right here.
I'm a pilot, you know. Someday, I'm going to fly away from this place.
You're a pilot?
All my life.
He looks a lot more like a young Luke, which is what they're going for. And he's a better actor, at least in my opinion. And again, this is nothing against Jake Lloyd. This is why I have a hard time talking about this. Because again, this kid went through so much crap in his life. As bad as I feel for Ahmed Best, like he also went through some crap too. But you know, this is a little kid. He's like 9 years old. He was bullied ruthlessly in school, which pretty much single-handedly ended his career in acting. He hated acting so much after that movie that he quit. And he dealt with many psychological issues and even went to jail for a while. This is his mugshot. I feel really bad for him. Like, this movie really messed up his life. And now he's an adult, and he's doing a lot better from what I hear. And it could have easily been avoided if they just chose a different actor. I feel like this also could have very easily been avoided if they had just made Anakin older. I know George Lucas wanted to have, the tragedy of a little boy being ripped from his mother, when he already formed that attachment to her. But you could have had a very similar effect if he was like in his teenage years, and maybe instead of him being a slave, he was working at Watto's shop to try and earn some money to take care of his mom since he was the sole provider for her. Maybe she was unable to work, or she wasn't making enough on her own. And since they live out in Tatooine, a lawless desert, maybe he feels protective of her. So when he wins the big pod race, he earns a lot of this cash. He's able to help them buy the hyperdrive and give her some of the rewards. And so she's set for a while. So when he leaves and joins the Jedi Order and fulfills his dreams, maybe there's still a little bit of guilt in the back of his head. Like, should I have left her to follow my dreams when she's still on Tatooine? There are a lot of ways they could have made that work, but making him so young already causes problems because, again, it's really hard to find good child actors. And Jake Lloyd was, unfortunately, not suitable for that role. So Anakin enters the pod race, and he wins it. But I gotta say, honestly, this is not one of the parts of the film I have a problem with. I mean, sure, the pod race does drag on for quite a bit of time, but in all honesty, I kind of enjoy it. Another great aspect of this film, I will say, since we're getting to more positives, I guess, here, this film really does have some good fighting scenes. Sure, some people say they look too choreographed and that they look like they're dancing in many ways. I kind of enjoy that. I think it's kind of interesting to see the Jedi in their prime when they're fighting. Kind of looks like a dance. It kind of reminds me of Avatar, The Last Airbender, how a lot of their bending feels like dances in many ways. There's literally a firebending form called the Dancing Dragon. So when you, in a generation of Jedi in their prime, with all these different fighting styles, yeah, I think it looks cool. They're in like some kind of it looks like they're dancing in many ways. Especially the end fight with Darth Maul and Qui-Gon. And even the fight that Qui-Gon and Maul have on Tatooine, that's a pretty cool fight scene. Which also kind of leads me to another small point I was going to bring up. One thing I think this film really does well, which is kind of the whole point of the prequel trilogy, is to show the arrogance of the Jedi Order. At this time, the Jedi Order has lost its way. They've become servants of the Senate rather than servants of the Force. And that's kind of why Qui-Gon and the Jedi Order are kind of at odds with each other, because Qui-Gon is all about, I'm following the will of the Force and the will of the Force alone. He doesn't necessarily follow the Jedi Code, 100%, but that doesn't mean he's turning to the dark side in any way. He serves the light fervently. He just disagrees a lot with the Council because their main concern is politics again. I think one line that really sums up the state of the Jedi in the entire prequel trilogy is what Mace Windu says to Qui-Gon Jinn when Qui-Gon tells the Council that he thinks he's encountered the Sith. After he's done fighting Maul, he says, yeah, I found someone who may potentially be a Sith Lord. And instead of going like, well, maybe we should investigate this, or are you sure? Like, what makes you think that? Let's look into this. This is a serious issue. Mace Windu's just like, I don't think the Sith could have returned without us knowing. Like, what arrogance! Like, his first response is not, well, let's look into that. It's, yeah, no, we're so powerful that they couldn't have returned without us knowing. Really? This, again, it perfectly shows how corrupt the Jedi Order had become and how self-centered they had become. And this ultimately leads to Palpatine's rise and the failure of the Jedi Order. But anyways, the movie goes on. After they fail to get help from the Senate to stop the invasion, they go back to Naboo with the help of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and for some reason they bring Anakin along. I don't know why they brought Anakin to a war zone, because he's a child, but for some reason they do. And so the Naboo get the help from the Gungans. They have this big battle, and they fight everyone, and then the Jedi, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, split off and fight Darth Maul in probably one of the most epic lightsaber duels of all time. Just that when that Duel of the Fates starts playing, and I'm just like, yeah, it's great. As much as I have problems with this film, that's one scene that I get excited about. The music, the intensity of the battle, Maul's cool dual-bladed saber, he's just going at it, fighting Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. They're working together in unison to fight him off. And yeah, it's very sad when eventually Maul kills Qui-Gon. Obi-Wan gets all, pumped. He takes down Darth Maul and, kills him. I mean, we find out later he's alive in the Clone Wars show, which we'll cover later. But it's still a fun scene, and it's a great way to kind of lead into the ending of the film. But now Darth Maul's been killed. It's official. The Sith have revealed themselves. Obi-Wan's made a knight so that he can take over training Anakin and fulfill that promise that Qui-Gon made him promise to do. Yeah, for some reason the Council's totally cool with that, and is like, well, it was Qui-Gon's dying wish, so even though we had concerns about Anakin being a danger to the galaxy and him being too old to be trained, sure, whatever, we'll let you train him. I don't know why. I mean, Yoda still maintains that he thinks it's a bad idea. At least he's consistent. But he just kind of goes, agree with you. The Council does. Skywalker, your apprentice. He will be. But only because that's what the Council decided, not what he decided. So, but we're never given a reason as to why the rest of the Council thinks it's a good idea. I don't know. Maybe because earlier when they said it was a bad idea, it was only Mace Windu and Yoda saying that it was a bad idea. I mean, nobody else on that council ever says anything. That's one weird thing about just the entire prequel movies. You ever notice like nobody else ever talks during those council meetings? You never notice, like it's always Mace Windu and Yoda who are always making all the decisions. I love that Robot Chicken sketch with Jarl Poof.
I will tell him of the council's decision tomorrow.
Oh, so it's a council now? It's not just the two of you? What about you, Dogface? Did you know that now it was a council?
Inform the Senate, we must, of our lessened ability to use the Force.
Who can't use the Force now? I can still use the Force. Let's put that one to a vote, because I don't even know what that means.
And then we get the funeral scene with Anakin, and where they make the big reveal that, subtly trying to say, guess what? You know, there are always two Sith, right? So what? Who is the other Sith? It's. Let me tell you a secret. It's Palpatine. Yeah. No, that was totally not known before. Overall, it's not a great film, but I wouldn't say it's the worst Star Wars movie ever made. It's definitely very kiddish, and a lot of things really weren't thought out too well. I mean, even George Lucas said when he saw the first viewing of The Phantom Menace, it's a lot thrown at you. You're being jerked around, and I may have gone too far in a few places. The acting is very dry, and the dialogue doesn't help either. But the actors do what they can, and they do a decent job with what they're given. The thing is, this film is bad, but it's not horrible, and it's not insultingly bad either, which is why I think it's just fun to watch and make fun of the bad scenes. Overall, I'd rate this film 5 out of 10 Jar Jars. Well, anyways, let me know what you guys thought of The Phantom Menace. Do you like it? Do you hate it? With every burning passion within you, do you think it's the best film ever made? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure it's going to be a great and thoughtful discussion down there. If you liked my thoughts on this, if you liked the video, maybe consider hitting the like button and maybe subscribing so you can watch more videos. I'm going to have 2 more reviews out this week for Attack of the Clones and then the Clone Wars TV show / movie. So look forward to those. Thanks for watching, Internet peoples, and I'll see you next time.